Everything discussed during the Level Up podcast with me, Duayne Pearce, is based solely on my own personal experiences and those experiences of my guests. The information, opinions, and recommendations presented in this podcast are for general information only, and any reliance on the information provided in this podcast is done at your own risk. We recommend that you obtain your own professional advice in respect to the topics discussed during this podcast.
It's my closest thing to being a celebrity right now, and I'm in your shed.
Hello and welcome to Level Up with Duayne Pearce. My dream is to improve the residential building industry for all involved. Throughout this podcast, we're going to be chatting to all types of industry experts to make sure that builders, tradies and clients all have a fantastic experience. All right, how are you guys? We are back here in the shed today for another episode of Level Up. This one's a pretty good one. So got a mate of mine, Aaron Wailes, been waiting for this one. So Aaron and I have known each other for, it's probably getting close to 4 or 5 years maybe now. We've done a lot of work together. So Aaron Wailes, Green Coast Building Designs. Tell us a little bit about yourself, mate.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's a privilege to be here, to be honest. So it's
Aaron, this could go in lots of ways because Aaron and I pretty much speak a dozen times a day about
we do
clients
talk a lot.
And different jobs, and we've got a lot of work on together. But mate, tell us, how did you get it into being a building designer? Like, what do you like about it? What drove you there?
Yeah, so my dad actually ran a small design engineering practice up north. And so finishing up school, always knew I wanted to be involved with some form of planning. I enjoyed it. I liked probably the space planning aspect of it, the problem solving. Sometimes it's a little bit like a puzzle. You got a lot of moving parts, a lot of fun to have. And there was always builders around. There was always other designers around. There was always something. And so I naturally grew to that. So to speak. My brother's an electrician, so he's involved in the industry as well.
So do you like puzzles? Do you do puzzles?
I can't say I'm a big puzzle man, to be honest.
Don't do an odd puzzle to chill out? No,
not at all. We're living up north at that stage, and got into the industry. Started doing a Bachelor of Building Design through Central Queensland University. We were up north, so there was no real avenue to go and do architecture at uni because there wasn't a uni doing that, you see. Yep. So I got onto the idea of doing the course via correspondence, as it was termed at the time. And the good thing about that is I got to work.
Yeah. So where are you from? Where's this?
Well, grew up here in Cleveland originally. Then we moved up to Bundaberg. And in my high school years, I was in Bundaberg, and hence, therefore, the university years started there as well.
Yep.
And so the good thing about that was I had all this equipment, didn't I? Because I had an office at my disposal.
Yeah.
Which I'm still very thankful for that. So back in the days when the internet used to be dialed up through your phone and all of that, I had access to all this equipment through Dad's office. So it was like, well, it's a no-brainer. Let's do it by correspondence. So worked through the day, studied at night, which was good. Probably needed to have been a little bit more diligent with my study.
Well, it'd be hard up there because you're also into your fishing and diving.
Yeah, we loved our diving. I was a lot younger and fitter back then, so enjoyed the diving. And Bundaberg there's on the reef, obviously, the Southern Bunker Group, but you can do a lot of spearing just offshore. You don't need a boat because obviously didn't have a boat as a young kid. But so studied there and then made the big trip to Brisbane, lived down here in Brisbane with my brother.
Yeah.
Started working with a small architectural practice and I think the first 10 years we were involved in commercial.
Yeah.
So we didn't look at housing we did aged care facilities, independent living units. We also I worked on hospitals.
So what's your just the work that we've done over the last few years and seeing some of the work we've got coming up over the next couple of years, like you're very, very good at building design. So
Thanks, mate.
What was your passion for residential? Like what got you over in that direction?
I think Yeah, well, I think anyone who's worked in commercial can know there's an incredible amount of pressure.
Yeah.
When you work in commercial, the days of staying up till midnight, 2 a.m. in the morning, working on development feasibilities and trying to get a deadline out, you
Yeah.
just get to a point and then, the project doesn't go ahead.
Yeah.
And so you just I didn't really enjoy it as much. Lifestyle was changing, but what got me over there was you enjoy actually seeing people connect with a home. It's a personal space.
Yeah.
And like we say today that we design a home around someone's lifestyle.
Yeah, well, mate, I've
Yeah.
definitely, like, over the years, I've done work for lots of building designers, architects, draftsmen, all type of people. Like, I think one thing that draws me to you, and I think we work very well together, but just seeing how much effort you put into figuring out how a family or a person lives and operates.
Yeah.
And I definitely think all the work we do has made me a better builder, just seeing why things are done a certain way, but understanding that we're actually building people's homes.
Yeah,
We're not just building a house.
Exactly. Yeah, it's not a house. And admittedly, clients, when you first ask them or you say to a client, look, we're going to design a home around your lifestyle, so we need to know how you live. So do you enjoy getting up and making coffee? Are you an early riser? Do you want to see the sun come up? Do you need to sleep in? Like, what's your hobbies, your pets, your lifestyle? What investment expectations have you got?
Yeah.
At times, a client can just look at you and go, hey, hang on, what you're asking too many questions. Well, you could go and buy a display home.
Yeah.
But they're not doing that. And the reason they're not doing that is because they want a custom design. So
Yeah, look, and I've definitely learnt from you, mate, that having a well-designed home that suits you changes your life.
Yep.
Like I've never been a fan of the prototype homes. Like I built a lot of them, like shitloads of them when I was an apprentice and even when I started contracting. But they're like the one that you go and visit when you buy one of those homes, it might be in the right location, have the right light and all those things, but then they go and plonk the same house on 5,000 other blocks of land. But I really have an appreciation now for and we've got a couple on at the moment, like one, our waterfront one especially, it's already feeling like a home and we haven't even finished there yet. Like it's so welcoming. I don't want to leave. I go there to check on the boys and check the trades.
Well, that's an interesting one because that client, we designed that, and a lot of people may never appreciate this when they walk in, but that home was designed for 2 people.
Yeah.
And that's it. It wasn't designed for the market.
Yeah.
And I think,
do you think people go wrong there? Because it's definitely changed the way I look at things. And obviously we've got you doing some work at the moment for our own house. But just, it's one, I don't know, I've sort of come to this realization that a house and where you live really affects your life.
Absolutely.
It can cause you to get depression. It can make you want to be out all the time because you don't feel comfortable. There's not enough natural light. There's so many things that come into play. And when you get it right, like I said, a lot of the houses, or I would say every single one of the houses that we're building that you're designing now, they are a home.
Yeah.
Before we finish, they become a home.
Yeah, and that's the focus. That's an interesting point you make. Okay, so how do we break that down? You've essentially got a market that's driven by an expectation financially.
Yeah.
And that can become the focus in 2 ways. One, people want rock bottom price because they're so concerned that they won't make enough money, so they want to screw everyone down. They don't appreciate quality will drop. They miss design cues, etc., etc. But then you can get the other end of the spectrum where we throw money at a product and it's an absolute waste of money. Yeah, we're throwing money away. I think the important thing there is that if you examine what you need, then design it right and spend time doing that, you will actually stop boxing at shadows, and what will come out on paper is a great product, regardless of what it is.
Yeah.
Then you can have fun expanding on that or taking away from it.
Yeah.
The market, you only need 2 buyers to haggle over one property.
Yeah.
And in our current market, you apparently only need 1.
Well, yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
That even just the little things, again, I just never put any thought into it because it was sitting in, obviously doing our Pac Process and coming to all the design meetings and things. like just something as simple as storage. Like I just never
Yeah.
thought about it. Like the way that you figure out what hobbies people have, like, and you're so right. Like if they have paddle boards or kayaks or things like, so many people just move into a house and they just end up with their garage full of shit and their cars are up out on the road. And
Absolutely, yeah.
like the fact that you go into all that detail, again, just changes the feel of the home. Like everything's got a place.
Yeah, well, and it's important because once again, if we don't know how they live, what's going to happen is they're going to comment on the fact that, oh, this house doesn't suit us. The question probably is going to be then, oh, who's the designer? And so they're having a conversation around a barbecue about how disappointed they are. But I can't remember the exact home, but there was a home that many moons ago, it was the house of the year. It was it'll come back to me at 1 a.m. in the morning now, but it was a round house down south somewhere in one of the peninsulas. They couldn't furnish it.
Yeah.
It was so troublesome to furnish this particular design. Looked great, but you couldn't live in it.
Yeah.
And that's, so why do we love residential? Well, sometimes I don't think you and I love it. I don't think we love it at times.
Oh, there's definitely challenges.
There's challenges, but I think seeing, like, we've got client out at Grassdale Road now, they're wrapped. They love their home. And I think seeing people's satisfaction, it's hard work. They've got stuck into it. It's good to be involved in.
Oh, mate, I love it. Like and the older I get and the more I do it, the more I love it. And I do think, like, my passion is definitely coming back and being driven more by having such a successful process. Like, obviously, you know the story. We had lots of trouble in our early days, like most builders, but like now having the Pac Process, and it's very successful working with yourself and other guys. But like I said, I believe it's making me a better builder by being more involved in design, because, like, I know for a fact in the past, like I look back now and think I stuffed those houses up. Like the designer or the architect would be out of the equation. We would start building. The client would want to move a window or a doorway or a room or something. And I'd just do it. Yeah. Because I didn't understand the story behind it or why it was done a certain way.
I think that works two ways though. Like, we're definitely better designers by working with builders better. Yeah. And being more collaborative, and having a builder involved will help you. Like, I heard one architectural course once say, we don't need to teach construction, because if we teach construction, it will limit design. Yeah. Now, if you think about that comment for 30 seconds, if we can design things but we can't construct them, we haven't designed anything. Because to have a design, it needs to be constructed. Yeah. So it's a real shame that there's a lack of appreciation in the design world for what the builder's doing, what they're challenged with. Like, little aspects, if it's just something as basic as a polished concrete floor, how that floor is protected over the course of a build. Why does that add so much money to the build? Yeah. It's not just the concrete, it's how we work around it. Yeah. What's going to happen when the scaff drops on it and it chips you and it's right in the middle of your kitchen. Yeah, it's a whole process, isn't it? And like, it amazes me now. Like, I see people doing it the old-fashioned way, and I think back to how I was taught to do it, and I just think it's so crazy. Like, it's a recipe for disaster every single time, and it sort of makes sense why the industry's got such a bad name. But as I guess for people that don't know, and I still struggle with this a little bit, what is the difference between an architect and a building designer? Oh, that old question, that old chestnut. Okay, I'll try and explain it in the most simple way I can. You've got different forms of tertiary education post grade 12. Yeah. Obviously, you can choose different degrees. There's obviously different universities that offer different degrees in architecture as well. Essentially, you go through a university degree to get a qualification. Then you write your thesis to be an architect, and you register with the Institute of Architects, okay? So you can't call yourself an architect unless you've done that, okay? So you've got obviously your university modules, etc., your practical experience, and then you've got to go before the board and register, okay? So the Architects Act, I forget what year it is, but the Architects Act essentially says, in layman's terms or simple terms, you can't call yourself an architect unless you're registered as an architect. So that makes sense. Yeah, it makes sense. That's the law, and good on them. I think that's fair. I've got no qualms with that. So you'll get someone who, say, has done an architectural degree but never registered.
Yeah.
So they've done an architectural degree, but they won't call themselves an architect, for example. The government came along and said, well, let's open more university education sectors. Let's, offer alternate courses, etc., which benefited me greatly as well, because I could do that.
Yeah.
So then you go and do a bachelor in building design. You can also do a TAFE course to do building design as well, for a limited license, I believe it is. I'm not sure. But you can't call yourself an architect.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think in historical terms, the architectural degree, quite rightly, focused considerably more on design. Focusing more on design solutions, intricate detail. The so-called building design / drafting role, design courses, whatever you want to call them, have probably come at it from an angle of a more all-rounder qualification, if that makes sense.
Building design is definitely, even just from the time I've been in the industry, I think it's leveled up. Like there seems to be a lot more, like the quality of work produced by building designers is almost getting up towards the level of architects.
Yeah, that's an interesting comment. I think you're right. The standard for building designers is definitely rising as they become the world. Essentially, the design world's getting smaller. You can publish designs, you can expose your design flair on media platforms, etc., which is allowing a lot more people to have a lot more diversity with respects to who they choose. I still believe, however, that your leading architects in Australia and around the world, they're a cut above the rest. They really are. They are a cut. I think of Glenn Murcutt, someone who I read about a lot as an Australian architect, and then I think of Frank Lloyd Wright. You look at the detail they've done, how they've changed spaces. That to me is the pinnacle. I think sadly, the term architect has just been used too broadly. Like we get a lot of
it really annoys me. Like you see, like it's all thrown around these project home stats, like architectural home by a volume builder. Like to me, there is absolutely no way that a volume built product is an architectural product.
Yeah, and like I've worked with developers in the past who employed incredibly talented architects, and they did fantastic homes. There's no question of that. And they were large volume builds. They would go through a development critique, and sometimes they were ripped apart, sadly. But you see today that there's a lot of architects who can't design.
Yeah, well, mate, there's a lot of builds that can't build.
That's right. And so sadly, you've got you've got this disproportionate seesaw effect of, well, who do I choose? And like I think like a good friend of ours, like Amelia's touched on that quite well, in that you can't choose a professional just based on a title.
Yeah.
Like we don't go along to a doctor and say, great, you're a doctor, you're right for me.
Yeah.
You generally go and get a second opinion. You know what I mean?
Like, 100%. And look, I think it's, I don't know. I definitely see from what I've seen in my time in the industry that building designers, it's definitely, it's risen. And
it has. I think to be fair, I think they've got a long way to go, personally. I still feel there's some huge, as you know, there's some huge gaps in our industry. The whole industry's got a long way to go.
Yeah.
That's the problem. Yeah. And there's it's like a piece of cheese with holes cut through it. Do you know what I mean?
It is. That's a good way of putting it.
It is literally, you just go like, what am I trying to dodge today?
Yeah.
Sadly that you could debate that for hours and talk about that for hours, but
how have you, like, so where did you go from there? Like you did your studies, you worked in your dad's office, you obviously got qualified, and so did you go and work, or you touched on you went and worked for other companies? Like when did you get to a point that you're like, I want to have a crack at this myself?
Yeah, well, left Bundaberg, came down to Brisbane, started working commercial, kept working commercial. Then went overseas, worked in commercial again. We're working in the UAE and in London. Came back, started again, and then realised with a small family, young family, just thought, I felt like I'd get more job satisfaction. So I think Oh, that was about 15 years ago
Yeah.
that I can remember now, that we said, no, enough's enough. We want to start to, I had enough drive to want to do it.
Want to put your stamp on
Yeah,
on things.
I wanted to
Yeah.
do it. I wanted to challenge myself. And so just started doing it, basically.
So what's for young people out there now that might be thinking about getting into design or architecture and stuff, like what's some tips you'd give them?
What's some tips I could give them? Okay.
Because it's a hard game, and
It's a tough
I think
game.
these days it's like young people out there sitting on the fence, not knowing what they want to do. Like I love design, like I love building, but like I think it would be a pretty rewarding career to see something that you've put on paper follow through and become someone's dream.
Yeah, and it is. It certainly is. Like, what would I do differently? What advice would I give? I think there's no actual one course that combines practical on-site construction with design. Ideally, if you could do a bachelor of, say, building design, you could design commercial, retail, residential buildings, whatever.
Yeah.
And if you could combine that with doing a trade-based carpentry apprenticeship, right? Now you think, okay, how would you make that work? Like, that's pretty crazy. But realistically, it's not.
Yeah.
Because during the day you would work, you'd get paid, you'd learn on-site skills, practical skills.
Yeah.
At night, you might do 2 modules a term.
Yeah.
Right? That might be, so yeah, you take longer to do the course. That's okay. We're not in a rush. What would that get you at the end? It would get you a qualified, you'd have the opportunity to be a builder, but you'd also have the design background.
You'd understand materials, how they get used, all that type of things. Yeah.
And like, I remember our materials subject, we had this, and I can remember sitting there learning about lead and corrosion and metals and minerals. And I can remember sitting there thinking, what am I doing?
Yeah.
Why am I learning this? But you don't appreciate it as a young student until you see the guys working with it on site.
Yeah.
You see? So the tip I would give people getting into design, try and include yourself in some form of practical experience. Just try and learn, even if you go and volunteer your time when you've got the opportunity, try and get on a site and start to learn
Get
how
some
to put
hands-on
houses.
experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, for every builder or tradie who's turned around and said to me, hey, you guys need to come out here and learn how we work, my general response
I've had a few of them arguments.
my general response back to them is, absolutely, I'll come to a full day tomorrow. You come into the office and we'll start. And I'm going to give you a blank sheet of paper and one pencil and see what you come up with.
That's what I was saying before. Like I like obviously we work through a process and like it's definitely made me a better builder, like knowing more about what you do and not just yourself, like liaising with you and the engineer and figuring out why things are done a certain way. And like it helps us. It doesn't just help me, it helps me go back to site and talk through situations with my boys and make sure that we get what you're expecting in the finished product.
And we do the same thing because we've got to know your crew, and it's great when the builder calls you back. And like you've said in the past, like sometimes you'd get delivered a set of documents, you'd win the tender, you'd meet the client, you'd be starting in a week. Those days are gone.
Yeah.
Like you want the feedback, you want
that's
dialogue.
Sadly, that's still how a lot of people work. Like a lot of people, of architects, designers put plans out for tendering. All the client, I think a lot of it is actually more client led, but they just get to a point, they put the drawings out for tender, and then like we're in those situations where like people probably think it's funny, but the amount of jobs that we did where we would spend 6-12 months working, like having some phone calls, pricing, working with a designer or an architect, and I'd never meet the client once. Like the day I'd meet the client was the day I was signing the building contract. Yeah. And those jobs always, they didn't end in disaster, but they were always very, very difficult. But yeah, I definitely think designers, architects, builders will collaborating, working together in a team is the only way to get a successful outcome, especially for people's budgets. Like when budgets aren't discussed regularly, like obviously I think sometimes you and I probably focus on the budget a little bit too much. But
I think Yeah, do we discuss it too much? Perhaps we do. Maybe we don't. I think the industry has created, the consumer ultimately has created a problem with budgets. It's not that a lot of people blame the builder or the designer. And that is true. There's one-off cases. That's fine. There's always going to be those one-off individual cases where someone's done the wrong thing. But at the end of the day, consumers, all of us want our property values to go up.
Yeah.
We all want to pay rock bottom for the best quality.
But building's very, it's very different. Like I'm definitely a firm believer that you can't compare building to anything else. Like building, someone trying to get us to focus on budget. Like when they in the early days when they first come to us, and this is where you and I put a lot of time in to make sure we guide our clients. But like a client coming to us and filling our design brief is like putting a shopping trolley full of groceries in front of us and telling us, tell us how much that shopping trolley. Like you could have 3 shopping trolleys, all level at the top, but the price could vary dramatically depending on what's in that trolley. Like a house is no different. Like
absolutely, yeah.
What goes into that house could make a house vary by hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah, and I think that's probably the message we need to help people understand is that it's just as frustrating for the builder and for the designer when the cost is what it is. Like we would love nothing more for the costings process of a project and the design to be minute.
Well, it'll never be a precise like process because it varies so much.
Correct. Right. But wouldn't it be nice if we could just sail through it and it never cause stress? But it doesn't. Yeah. It doesn't happen. So
I like what you do. Like you, one thing you have taught me to, because I used to get really focused on it, but it's not over budget until we sign a contract.
That's right.
And so many, and like I've learnt that works so well now because it's like even with the process you and I do and it works so well. Like people always want to push the boundaries and want to see what they can have and what they can't have. And the first round of costings is generally always, like I think in 12 years we've only probably had half a dozen jobs that's been tick the box, way you go, build the job.
Right.
But there's always revisions, and through those revisions 9 times out of 10 they end up with a better product, like because through those revisions you're nailing down finishes, you're nailing down selections, you're modifying and making sure we get the best design. Like
it's helping people we all have to learn to accept what we are choosing not to invest in too.
Like you've definitely taught me that. Like
if we want to expend X amount of dollars, the client, the designer and the builder all have to accept that not everything can fit within that $500,000 bucket.
And something they might think they want is a priority when they actually know the cost of it might make something else a priority. So it changes, and that's why I think that saying you do now, where it's not over budget till you sign the contract, is such a good one, because it, as you know, like it's generally taking us between 2 and 4 revisions of pricing before we go to contract. But through those pricings, like you're modifying the design, the client's making selections, and we end up with a great product.
That's right. And that's, it's an effective way to make sure we can demonstrate to our clients that we've done everything we can for their money to get them the best result. And then educated them as to what costs are associated with certain elements. I think the worst one is then we spend another $200,000, $400,000 after we've signed the contract. And we say to the client, we could have done a completely different design if we were going to spend that money in the original scope. But
knowing what I know now from you, like what I've learnt, it would be very frustrating. Like why? And again, it's something that I wasn't conscious of, but your design would be different. Like if a client tells up a budget of $500,000, we aim to design a $500,000 house.
That's right.
But if they've kept 100 or 200 up their sleeve because they've heard all these horror stories that the budget's going to blow out and they're going to need this contingency, you would have designed a different product.
That's right, exactly. And they'd probably be a lot happier with it.
Yeah, well, and you were saying this for a long time, but I wasn't it wasn't registering what you meant, but it could be a completely different layout. It could be from a single story to a two story. Like so do you think it's like we do try this, but do you think to me, budget is the most important thing. Like to start a process, to have something to aim for. Like it will change and vary throughout the process, but there has to be a bit of a starting point for everyone to be heading towards. Do you think clients should be a bit more open and forthcoming with a budget, or do you,
That's a hard question. Like I respect the fact that clients are hesitant to, because as you alluded to, the horror stories. Okay. But if a client has the opportunity to, interview their designer, interview their builder, get to know them, go and look at past products, check out what's been designed, how they communicate, and actually get to know them, they shouldn't feel hesitant then in saying, hey guys, I want to invest X amount of dollars.
Yeah.
So we say you've got two options, right? Basically, you can tell us that your budget's X amount, and we can tell you what you can achieve for that amount of money.
Yeah.
Or alternatively, we can design a product that meets exactly your brief, right? And educate you on how much your brief costs.
Yeah.
Right. And often a client will say, no, you just educate me on what I want and what it costs. At that point, we obviously say, if you were to spend this quality of finish, it's approximately $900,000 or 400 or 1.8 million. Then we ask the client, are you prepared to take that amount of money out of the bank?
Yeah.
And if they are, well, then we just go to work designing the brief.
Yeah.
So there's more than one way to approach it. I don't know if budget's the most important thing.
Yeah,
because
probably,
it's like to me, design is okay, because you can have the budget that's right, you can build it right, but if the design's wrong,
true,
it's not okay. So
that's it's a mixture.
It's a mixture, an amalgamation of those things. But you've got to have clients, designers, and builders have got to be prepared to have a couple of rounds and go through it.
not rounds.
Not rounds in that sense. But
sometimes some people probably get in those situations.
They get themselves. Well, I've heard of horror stories recently in the papers. But look, I think your budget's important, but you can't price something till we've designed it.
Yeah.
Now, with an industry that is challenging pricing daily, we can't get quotes on things until they're fully documented.
Yeah.
So now we find the consumer, the designer, the builder, all in this merry-go-round of how do we approach budget.
Yeah, it's just getting harder and harder, isn't it?
It is. So we've basically got to get to, we answer those questions on budget purely on money. You take design away from it and just ask, what would you like to spend?
Yeah.
$1 million will get you this. Are you comfortable?
Yeah.
Are we talking 1.2 to 1.5, or are we saying that we're maxing out at 500,000 because that's what we want to invest? That's fine.
Yeah, and then work
through it go. So don't be afraid to talk about money. Is essentially the real thing.
Yeah, and and I think that's I think so many people are, because that's all you hear is the horror stories, and I think they like a lot of people get nervous that they feel if they let the budget out of the hat, then the job's just going to be made to suit that. But and
they do though too, because if they've gone through a sales process of a house, they've probably been upsold everything along the way.
Yeah,
and their original 550 is now 950.
Yeah,
or that's an extreme example, but we get the point. So those situations happen.
So mate, just quickly before we move on to a little bit more about you, like what tips would you give clients that are possibly sitting on the fence thinking about building or renovating? Like, what would you? Because for me, your design brief's a big thing for me. Like, I don't see a lot of that getting done. Like, and I think that plays a huge role in the final product. Yeah,
the tip, if you're sitting on the fence and you don't know where to start with your lifestyle, and then educate yourself on what and how you would like to live. And then you form your design brief around that.
Yeah.
Okay. So you establish your design brief, your objective, A lot of people probably get nervous by the term brief. Like, what is a brief?
Yeah.
But it's essentially your objective, what you're seeking to achieve, your goals, your outcomes.
Yep.
Put that into a bundle of information. Use a scrapbook.
Yeah.
Like, literally keep it simple. Use a scrapbook, whack it together and say, hey, this is what I'm trying to achieve. I've watched you and I've watched others, and now I'd like to use you as a professional to do my design or my build, and then trust that professional.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you finished. I'm glad you touched on that, because that is a massive thing for me now. Like, and I've learnt this lesson because
when clients don't trust us, they don't believe us.
Well, as you know, we've done quite a few projects for ourselves now. We've done a couple with you, and you're currently working on our own house, and it's definitely been hard for me to sit back as a builder, but like it is. Like, you've just blown us away with what you've done for our place, and you've definitely done things that we would never have, or we still like, we're very iffy with when you we first saw it. But then like, you talked us through the journey of why you did what you did, and it's just, mate, we're stoked. Like, when we come home from your office after that last meeting, like, mate, we're on fire. Like, and as you know, like, we're not even ready to start renovating, and I've already had a couple of boys pulling shit apart because we just want to get it going. But you've really, like, my advice for anyone that's thinking about building a new home or renovating is that you have to trust your designer.
Yeah.
Like, obviously, like, designers would be no different to builders. There'd be a lot of cowboys out there, I'm sure. But doing your homework, finding a designer that gels with you, because for me, I think one of the reasons we work well together, like, it's you've got to have similar personalities and even interests. Like, for me, I find our best clients are clients that have similar interests to me, like camping, four-wheel driving, getting out with my family.
And the reason for that is, though, is because we identify quicker with their lifestyle.
Yeah.
So we relate quicker, therefore we communicate quicker.
Yeah.
You see, whereas if someone's, say, the polar opposite to us, which is fine, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
I think the obligation on you and I is that we've got to take a little bit more time to learn why they would like to do something in that particular manner. We've got a wonderful client at the moment who, for example, does not want a casual room or a breakout space on the upper floor.
Yeah.
Now, as we delve into their life more and we understand how they live, it's all starting to make sense. This is their life, and they live differently, not wrongly, but they've got a very clear vision of how they want to live. And once we connected with that, they fell in love with the design straight away.
But it's people trusting you, isn't it? Like, it's people trusting you to listen to them, take all that information in, and then put it on paper in a way that suits them.
Correct. Yep.
And a lot of we've seen it multiple times, and I've definitely done it myself. Like, because I guess, like, one thing you're definitely very good at, I think, is like, at those first meetings, is taking people through that journey, like explaining why you've done what you've done. I think there'd be a lot of designers out there that would just draw plans, send them off, or have a meeting. This is what I've done, and the client might have lots of questions about it, but they don't get explained why it's ended up the way it has. Like, I think trusting your designer is a big thing, but then designers also have to take them on the journey, don't they?
Absolutely, yeah. The designer's got to do that, and there's got to be a bit of common sense humility there too.
Yeah.
Like, you'll get some architects, designers there. You've got to ask, who are you designing for?
Yeah.
The client?
Yeah, true.
Or for your portfolio?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
And so it's that seesaw effect of trying to get the balance of a team that works for you, some people who communicate. And I really get annoyed with hearing people say you got to communicate better. You can have someone who's not good at what they do and they communicate really well.
Yeah.
It doesn't make the outcome better.
Yeah.
There's still got to be responsibility.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like,
there's got to be both, doesn't there?
Absolutely, yeah. To turn around from a designer's point of view or a client's point of view and say, oh, we're not getting this communication. Well, no, you're just not enjoying hearing what is reality.
Yeah.
And the reality of the situation is that that particular site or that brief or that house
Budget.
does not work.
Yeah.
So that communication's quite clear.
Yeah.
It's just not sometimes what we want to hear.
Yeah. And look, at the end of the day, whether it's building designer or builder, the problem with our industry is that the longer that people like that shop around, they will find someone that isn't running a good business, that doesn't understand the business side of being a builder or being a designer, and they'll do it for what the client tells them they can do it for.
Absolutely,
And look, we all know the stories. Like, and back in the early days, I got myself into a few of those positions. But
I think I think that's the difference. I think we all did. Like, the best buildings or the worst buildings, I should say, are sometimes covered with landscaping, right? And we know how builders at times will cover their mistakes. We find them when we renovate the houses.
Yeah, definitely.
But I think everyone's learning. It's an industry that's getting bigger. It's over-regulated and under-regulated. The key to doing a good job is self-education.
Oh, definitely.
You've got to be out there being responsible to educate.
Yeah.
Probably the biggest lesson I've learnt too, which you've helped me with, you can't do it all yourself.
Yeah.
The whole idea of a one-man band is just comical. You just can't do it.
Yeah.
It's not you're treading on ice.
But it all comes back to the old thing, like everyone thinks they can't afford it, the business can't afford it, but it's having that understanding that you can afford it. You just need to charge what it takes to cover that.
That's right.
But so mate, I think we've covered some awesome stuff there. It's going to give people a lot of value. But mate, I want to know more about you. Like, so what are you?
I'm pretty boring, to be honest.
What are you? I know you're like you and I got quite a few common interests. I know you're very you're a family man. You love getting out with your family, but you do a bit of fishing and diving stuff, don't you?
Well, yeah, I try to do diving. In recent years, unsuccessfully. Did a lot more when I was younger. Common interests about us. Well, look, I would suggest we like keeping to ourselves. We're family orientated. We got 3 kids, 2 beautiful girls and an awesome young boy. And camping. I love touring. Yeah. I love getting out and seeing Australia. I think we live in the best country in the world. And
what's your favourite spot where you've been?
Oh, well, I've been since I was a kid, from Tassie through to Cape York. I couldn't, for different reasons, I'd say being on remote beaches up the Cape would be some of the best memories. Yeah. But for different reasons, if that makes sense. Like, you've got Carnarvon Gorge out there, which is amazing. We've got Fraser, and then we go out on the reef. I think recently being out at Northwest on some of the glassiest, most beautiful weather and seeing those coral trout and and whatever else we're catching at the time coming up, that's just... Salt
water and sand's good for the soul, isn't it?
It is absolutely beautiful. And getting out there and doing that's just, it just clears your head.
Yeah. And it's just, I don't know. I did a lot of fishing back in my younger days and I caught some really good fish. But for me now, it's probably a bit of an excuse. I don't catch a lot of fish, but I just love being on the water.
I think, I've actually said that to some of my mates as well, that for me, sometimes it's more important to be out here than what comes over the boat. Yeah. Because
100%.
You get that sense of freedom. Like when you're driving up the beach, you straight away, you air down the tyres and you're right. It can rain. I don't care. It can rain. Yeah. I'm driving along. We're having fun. We'll go from here.
Yeah, mate. For me, it's sand or dirt. Like if your tyres are on sand or dirt or you're on the water, everything's gone. You're clear. You can think about things. You can enjoy quality time with the family or friends or whatever it is. But so, like on the water, what's your best catch, mate? Come on.
Honestly, I actually don't think I've caught a lot of fish, to be honest. I think the best catch I've got would be some of the big barra from up north. Yeah. Light gear, small boats, up creeks. Yeah. That's really enjoyable. I pulled up a cracker of a trout just off Bolt Reef, I think it was. And
Out of 1770.
yeah, just recently. And it was a hua until the nice big bull shark took the other half of it. So the head, the cheeks and the head it actually fed 3 blokes for dinner.
Yeah, right.
So it was a nice hua, but I can't really remember. To be honest, I'm just happy to be out there.
Yeah, mate. Me
In
too.
all honesty,
Me too.
that's caught some fun fish, and
So the family get out. The family
yeah,
like it on the
definitely.
water.
The kids, as you know, when they're young, going out that wide and staying overnight in a boat's not the most comfortable.
Yeah,
We've only got a small boat, so when you're out on a boat for 3 days, but they love it. They do love it. We go out as a family, absolutely. More for a bit of recreational,
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, no, that's awesome, mate. Well, look, really appreciate your time. It's we've covered some pretty hot topics, I think. So, mate, really value, I guess, all the collaboration we do and the work we do together. And like I said, it's definitely made me a better builder. So, thanks very much for coming on and giving people a bit of an insight into how we work and what we do. And hopefully, a lot of people have got a lot of valuable information. So,
Thanks.
cheers, mate.
Thanks for having me.